And he knows he can't get the worship in heaven of the saints. So he wants to make humans, the seed of Eve, which defeated him in the form of Jesus, worship him here on this earth. And that's his purpose now. And that's why it says, all whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world, shall worship him. All kindreds, all tongues, all nations shall worship. Whose names are not in that book, they're going to worship him. And this is what he wants to shake his fist at God and say, I made them call me God anyway. I made them call me God. Now they're going to do this. This is the third conspiracy. And it's with the rulers of this world and with the kingdom of darkness in order to bring about what the rulers think they're bringing about, a utopia here on earth. October of 2007, the leaders of the Palestine Liberation Organization, the premier of Israel, President Bush of the United States, and Tony Blair, the ambassador for European Common Market, Russia, and the United Nations, all met in Annapolis, Maryland, and drew up an agreement where Israel would give so much land to the Palestinians to create the nation of Palestine. Now, this is what Daniel said would happen. Daniel said they would sign a treaty which would be a treaty for 7 years. Now, this treaty they drew up over there, contains all the elements of what the prophet said would be the last treaty of time. Now, just a few days ago, President Bush himself, a few weeks ago, I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, he was he also went there January the 19th, he was over there in Israel. 3 weeks ago, he went over there again. And now his secretary, Condoleezza Rice, is over there right now. They're trying to bring this treaty to be acceptable by both the Palestinian organization and Israelites. And President Bush and all the other nations are hoping they can sign this treaty before the end of the year of 2008. They haven't signed it yet. If they do, and when they do, if it's the treaty the prophets are talking about, that will end, or that will begin the Great Tribulation period. Not the Great, but the Tribulation period. 3.5 years later, that treaty will be broken, and that begins the Great Tribulation period, or the last half of the Tribulation period, where Jesus said in Matthew 24, there will be such tribulation the world has never seen before, nor will ever see again. And unless he shortens those days, there would be no flesh left alive on the planet Earth. But for the sake of the elect, he said, he will shorten those days. So the elect will be in that great tribulation period. Matthew 24. Read that chapter and you'll see. He said, for the sake of the elect, not for the world, but for the elect, he would shorten those days. So there is hope. He promised us in Revelation that we would not face the hour of temptation is coming upon all the world. So those who have ears to hear, like Paul said in Thessalonica, like we say over there, eyes to see and ears to hear, have a chance of escaping what this great, foul, terrible tribulation that's about to come upon the world as a result of the spiritual warfare that's raging now. If you have any questions so far, I'm ready. I will receive them. Do you have anything for me, or you want me to continue for a while longer?
Any of you that want to send a question in, send it to Bill, and then Bill can relate it. I wonder if, Howard, could you add one more thing to your teaching here, and that is back where you left off about where you died, and then your trip to heaven, and your experience at the heaven's gates and so on. Could you add that part in there?
Yes, I will. We'll go back to the very beginning. When I crossed the veil into the light, the first thing I saw was that ruling council that worked. Now, at this time, I knew my body was still alive. But I didn't know how long it was going to live without me being in it. So I was pleading to the angels to take me back, and they would never answer me. And finally, they told me that after a while they would bring me to God and allow me to plead my case to Him. But first, they took me into the room where the doctors was working on my body, and I saw. Of course, they couldn't see us because we was in spirit. We came right to the top of that building, and I saw my body laying on the bed, and they had a machine that was pumping the air, and another was pumping the blood, and the doctors was working on me, and they were all around. This is in the operating room, and they were all around the nurses and everything. And I looked at that, and I realized that those machines would be able to keep the body alive, but I didn't know how long they'd keep it alive. And I knew the longer I stayed away, the less likely I'd ever come back. And I knew that body was like an empty car. It might be alive, but it wasn't going to walk. It wasn't going to talk. It wasn't going to get off that table. It wasn't going to move because the driver was gone. That body might live, but it wouldn't never operate again until I got back in it. Now, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to die. I wanted to get back in that body. But the angels wouldn't tell me. They told me, first we want you to see this place. And they brought me to a place that I would say the closest description I'm going to be able to give you is like a tunnel that ran right through the sky. And in the center of this tunnel is a brilliant highway. It's not an ordinary highway. It's brilliant. Lined on both sides by the most beautiful flower gardens anyone's ever looked at. And at the further end of this tunnel was a brilliant light. So brilliant there was no shadows anywhere in that tunnel, yet soft enough to look directly at. Walking on that highway at first glance was what appeared to be ordinary, normal human beings. But as I looked at them closely, I realized they were not ordinary and normal. They were super extraordinary. And I asked the angels escorting me, who were they? And they replied, those are God's children going home. Well, I had always known the Bible had talked about a heavenly highway, but I had never perceived that as being a literal place. I always thought that was figuratively speaking. But there really is a heavenly highway. And you can read about it in Isaiah, let's see, what chapter is that in? I believe that's in 38, chapter 38, verse 1 through 10, or 1 through 5, I believe. It is called the King's Highway, where no foul or evil spirit are permitted therein. As I watched these saints, I was able to perceive three of the greatest truths that so overwhelm me. The first thing I was able to perceive was that they didn't have any age. See, there's no time and eternity. Therefore, there's no age. In order to have age, you have to have time. If there's no time, there is no age. Just what the Bible says, the land where you never grow old. The next thing I perceived was that they were neither male nor female. You see, spirits are sexless. Sex was given to the physical body for the purpose of reproduction. Immortal spirits do not reproduce, hence they are sexless. And the third thing I was able to perceive was I couldn't tell what the saints had been in physical life. I couldn't tell if they had been white, black, red, or yellow. For spirits are also raceless. So when your body dies physically, you don't die. You're released from that body. And when you're released and you go into eternity, you are ageless, you're sexless, and you're raceless. But you're the same unique individual there that you are here. You'll know and be known just as you know and you're known. You just won't look like there what you look like here. And I like to tell people, after all, that's good news for a lot of us, because you're going to change form 3 times in the course of your existence. You start out in flesh. Your second is spirit. Your third is glorified. If you want to see Jesus change forms like that, read the 20th chapter of the book of John, and you'll see him in those as he changes forms. And the 16th chapter of the book of Mark tells that he did change form, and it's exactly what we're going to do.